Spot on. Have you with us? It's been ages since I've done live because I've been away and then was away again. And it is absolutely wonderful to have Caroline Farrow back with us again. And I shockingly realized how long it's been since you're with us, Caroline. So sincere apologies, but it's good to have you back.
Great to be back, Peter. Great to be back.
Good to have you. Lots of stories to go in. One thing my team just asked me to mention, two quick things, is we're actually on Instagram to add to our dozen or so whatever social media channels. So Instagram at Hearts of Oak Podcast. That's at Hearts of Oak Podcast. You can follow us there. So take advantage of that. And the other little thing was, if you have ordered any of the t-shirts or anything and haven't got them, always feel free to drop us an email, shop@heartsofoak.org. I was actually stateside and someone in the States had ordered a t-shirt and hadn't received it. So I stuck it in my case, brought it over and posted it stateside. So do let us know if ever you haven't received anything after like 5 working days, just drop us an email, let us know, and we will get that sorted. You can obviously follow Caroline at CF_Farrow for all her updates. Make sure and have that on your Twitter follow list. Let's jump in. Lots of stories as always, and this is the first one. And I actually had the Daily Mail with me and I left it in the other room. This is the front page of the Daily Mail today, and it is exclusive. My doctors insist it's time I died, but I will fight them. Extraordinary case of 19-year-old woman suffering from Charlie Gard condition, which is another part of this, battling medics' attempts to condemn her to death. And kind of we'll bring up the Citizen Go petition in a moment, but I know you were following very closely the Charlie Gard case. When you read this story, it's baffling that we are at this point in the UK. But you want to just fill us in a little bit about what this is about.
So this is about a 19-year-old girl. Now, this is very close to my heart because my daughter's 19. And the girl has, or young woman, has mitochondrial disease, which is what Charlie Gard had. I think it's a different variant. And she was managing her condition, I understand. She was playing netball. She had good grades at school. She was taking part in lots of activities. And she got COVID, I think it was last year. And as a result of being hit hard by COVID, she deteriorated. So, and she's wound up in a position whereby she's requires intensive care to stay alive. So she's on, and I think specifically dialysis. But she has been declared sane by 2 psychologists she shouldn't be in that position, but she's been assessed by 2 psychologists who say she's completely, her brain function and her critical thinking is not impaired at all. Sadly, it's her body that has been hit really hard. This mitochondrial disease and the double knock-on of COVID has accelerated it. No, I can see someone saying, was it COVID or the jab? No, this is actually a genetic disorder she'd had, and whatever virus she got has just, really impacted her. And, we do know that people with suppressed immune systems are far more susceptible to COVID, to flu, so there's no, that part of it, is completely legitimate. It's so chilling, Peter. I can hardly articulate. So having been laid low by COVID, she's on dialysis, and the doctors are proposing that they take her off. They stop her dialysis. They stop her dialysis treatment, and she dies, because obviously she will die if she doesn't have dialysis. And they want to slap a DNR order on her too. Now, understandably, she's 19 years old and she has a very, very strong will to live. So she wants to go to Canada to take part in this, in an experimental treatment in order to see if it works. Now, she knows that it may not work. but she wants to try. She wants to give it a shot because she says, I'm 19, I'm not ready to die. If I die, I want to die fighting. I want to battle it. And most of us would say, good luck to her. You know, she's making that informed choice. However, the doctors have said, no, the fact that you won't accept the fact that you're going to die and that you won't let us take you off your dialysis means you're delusional. And so they've gone to court to fight. So, you know, they've gone to court to argue that she should die. Now, the difference here between this, what makes this especially egregious, is she's compos mentis. You know, this is not the case of Charlie, you know, a young vulnerable person who can't speak, who can't articulate, who can't communicate. She is able to communicate, and of course, no one's denying that she must be in pain or suffering. But she has made the decision, this is what I want to do. But the doctors have said, no, you can't possibly, you're delusional. So they've taken her to court, and the court is going to decide whether or not she can travel abroad for this experimental treatment. And even worse, or just as bad, they've slapped a gagging order on her and her family. Her family are a Christian family. So they're not allowed to talk to the press. They're not allowed to ask for prayers for her. They're not allowed to explain her situation. The treatment that she wants is going to cost $1.5 million. They'd like to fundraise for that. But no, they've slapped a gagging order on her and her family, which is unbelievable. It's so draconian. It's like it's the cult of death, really. You must die, you must accept you're dying, and you must go through your pain and despair and everything else alone. You can't ask for prayers, you can't be identified. Sorry, we've decided you're going to die, and you know, you're delusional thinking otherwise. This is so chilling, Peter. I don't know what piece of legislation or what statute or what provision is allowing this, but we need to, I've been trying to look into it, but we need to identify it, and it needs to be fought. There should be people marching on the streets over this. It's very easy to say, oh, this is very sad and it's best interest. No, if they can do this to a 19-year-old girl, they can do it to you. They can do it to your family. And it's so frightening that you go into an NHS hospital because most of us don't have any choice. We don't have the financial resources. Private healthcare in this country is extraordinarily expensive. Most of us don't have it. We pay for the NHS out of our taxes, and the NHS has no right, and it doesn't come into medical ethics either. If she wants to, in full knowledge of her condition, in full knowledge of knowing that it might not work, but if she wants to give it a shot, who are we to stop her? And it doesn't actually matter. I've had people saying, oh, well, you know, she can't decide her best interests. Yes, she can. You know, this really is my body, my choice, because it's her body and it's her life. And if she wanted to go to Canada and get a shaman to chant woo or wave crystals at her or to shake a stick at her, you and I might think that's very bizarre, but that's her choice and her decision. Who are we to say to her, oh, you must die and you must accept it, and and it's very, I mean, yes, it's very well known that when people are given a very difficult diagnosis or a terminal diagnosis, they do struggle to accept it. This is true. But this happens across the board with palliative patients. And it's fine. It doesn't mean that they're mad. And most palliative patients, you know, they do come to that acceptance, but she knows that she's got a hope. She's, you know, and that's being taken away. And actually, if it could work, then she should be allowed to try it. And, you know, it frightens me going into hospital. You know, we don't pay the NHS to, you know, basically the NHS needs to be honest. And this is what it's about. The NHS doesn't want to, it's pride. I think it was a couple of things. The NHS does not want to admit defeat. They don't want to say, we're not able to do this for whatever reason. Of course, if she goes and she's successful, then that highlights it brings up Charlie Gard again, because everyone said, oh, Charlie had this is a terrible treatment. It's never going to work. It's going to increase pain and suffering. So it may prove them wrong if it's successful over Charlie Gard. Secondly, this is about money. They don't, because in order for her to go to Canada, she'll need a critical care team to help with the transfer. They don't want to do that. Basically, they think she's a bed blocker. There's nothing else can be done. It's terribly sad. You're never going to get better love. So, we're just going to ease. It's in your best interests, really. We're going to take her. And how can it be in her best interests to do something? I mean, this is compulsory euthanasia. If she is dying, then how can it be in her best interests, mentally, spiritually, to put her in this situation where she's not allowed to just go for it, and where she can't even identify herself and say, they're taking me off my dialysis, I don't want them to. It's compulsory euthanasia. And I said this before on this show, but the NHS needs to be completely honest. So if the NHS wants to say, okay, we've got finite resources, we have a scarcity of resources, and we cannot justify paying this for your treatment. We can't, you're blocking a bed. We can't justify this. Put your hands up and be damn honest about it. Say, and because that is actually an ethical position to take in a system of socialized healthcare where we've got finite resources. It is really ethical to say, I'm so sorry, but we can't justify funding this. But the NHS doesn't, and the powers that be don't want to admit that, because the NHS is a sacred cow. Yeah. It's the all good, wonderful thing. And once you start saying, I'm really sorry, but we can't spend NHS money on this,
it
actually undermines trust, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. And I read the whole story in the Daily Mail that I don't have in front of me, and it was a big 2-pager. And so much, I read the double-page spread and could not believe what I was reading. And I know that Citizen Go have a petition that people can go to Citizen Go's website and sign that.
Yes, please do. And we've got 21,000 signatures. At the moment, she's in a race against time. Everybody should be going on there and signing. This is not something we can be apathetic about. This is, compulsory euthanasia. In fact, euthanasia is supposed to have an element of, it's not supposed to be coercive, but this is basically voluntary euthanasia. Well, not voluntary, it's compulsory euthanasia being imposed on someone. It's not medical ethics. When we go into hospital, we go into hospital because we hope they'll treat us and help us to get better. They ought to have no say on what we choose to do. It's like the Aisha King case. They threw the parents into jail, and now proton beam therapy, which is what Aisha went to get, has been introduced into the UK. And in fact, every single unit ought to have that family's name on, but the family went abroad. They got chucked into jail. How dare they? They've got no right to do this. They've got no right to stop somebody from traveling. And it's so chilling that a judge has said, because she doesn't agree with the doctors, we have to decide. No, I don't quite understand what legislation that comes under, but it frightens me. We need the MPs as yet are not speaking out about this. We need MPs. We need to elect MPs just to deal with this issue, because
I hope that actually with the story in the news over the weekend today, and I'm sure it'll continue tomorrow, you would expect them to pick up on it. But let's sorry, one final thing on this. Yep. And of course, why they're gagging her, because as soon as if they manage, I know that there's some legal moves afoot to try and get the transparency order lifted, or the gagging order lifted, because they know
as soon as a face is put to that name, as soon as there's a human being behind it, it's game over.
Yeah, no, it changes. I agree. And they're doing all they can do to keep that anonymous, 100%. But just for the viewers and listeners, make sure and go to Citizen Go website, and you can fill that petition along with many others and play your part in pressurizing, hopefully, our MPs here in the UK to actually do something about it. We'll leave that aside. We'll move on to something completely different, and that is Graham Linehan. And this is his story. Is that going to come? Yeah, that he was stopped from speaking at the Tory Party Conference. The Tory Party, formerly was the Conservative Party. And this was, We Are Fair Cop put this up because he stands up for women. Now, let me just play a little bit of the clip of Graham speaking. Let me just bring this up and play this. I'll just play a minute of him speaking about this.
Oh God, my hair! Oh no! Oh, I thought I missed that. While all this was happening, and I was getting a lot of very, very nice messages from people on Twitter about how well it was going. Something was happening in the background. Yeah, no, it is. Hi, Aleem. It is congratulations. It's been a funny week, but yeah, it seems to be interesting things seem to be happening. I mean, you can never call it because, if fucking they ignored Martina, they ignored J.K. Rowling, it's much easier to ignore me. But anyway, things do seem to be going quite well. So it's really nice. But anyway, a kind of a funny thing happened, which was, so a few weeks ago, I was asked to go to a freedom of speech event at the Conservative Party Conference. And I said yes immediately, because I'll talk about free speech anywhere. And I don't think the Conservatives are evil monsters the way I used to, because I obviously realized that the left were lying about many, many things. And as I always say to people, Conservatives never called me no bigot. But anyway, I was definitely going to do it. And I applied for accreditation, which is apparently usually a mere formality. Well, they refused it. I got turned down. So, so I've become the only person to be banned from both the Edinburgh Fringe and the Conservative Party Conference. So it's been...
We'll start because he goes into it. The obviously Graham Linehan of Father Ted fame, of IT Crowd fame, of now standing up for women's rights to be women. Graham Linehan, he's someone who, from the comedy side, you wouldn't think there's much pushback. He's not a political hard nut. He's just someone who's been in media, and yet he has faced an onslaught which is unbelievable to most people. But Caroline, getting banned from the Conservative Party Conference because you believe that women deserve women's spaces, it's gone mad.
Yeah, well, the story's a little bit, I have to be a little careful how I describe things, but the story's a little bit more complex than that. So basically, in order to be accredited, Graham had to go through a police check. Now, this went via Greater Manchester Police. Graham has already been reported to Greater Manchester Police, I think it was in 2018, and they apparently gave him a warning. I'm not sure about this because a warning doesn't exist legally. You can't get a harassment warning. Years ago, you used to be able to get a harassment warning notice, which was, you've been reported for doing whatever, and if you do it again, you're nicked, chum. And they've stopped doing this. The police have rightly stopped issuing these things because they realized they were actually being used as tools of harassment and themselves. So Graham doesn't have a criminal record, but apparently he's been reported and he's known. to Greater Manchester Police, and it was Greater Manchester Police who said to who flagged this up, and he got refused accreditation. So the Tory Party chairman, Greg Hands, stepped in, and now Graham is allowed to speak. And it's probably because everyone knows who Graham is, that and there's been so many headlines around him that this has happened. Now, Greater Manchester Police have been captured by Stonewall. Yeah. So this is not the only time they have behaved completely egregiously when it comes to trans issues. But it's, I think it shows as well. I'm just going to try and look up. I had somewhere on my screen what Greater Manchester Police had formed for. But I think in the meantime, what this shows is that these hate speech laws are just not fit for purpose, because, when these all came in, this was all off the back of Abu Hamza. And people were very worried about Islamic radicalization and what was being said. And, there was, post 9/11, there was a real danger that young Muslim men were going to become radicalized and pose a threat to the UK. And when you see what some of these Islamic clerics even were saying, then there always has to be some kind of limit on free speech. I'm not a free speech absolutist. Clearly, you should not be allowed to go around actually inciting violence towards other groups of people and encouraging people to do terrorist acts, or to say that, this group of people should be exterminated, or, yes, there does have to be a limit. But I think most of us have enough common sense to know where that limit is. So, for example, recently, unbelievably, there was a trans activist called Sarah Jane Baker, who is this very crazy guy who was serving a life sentence for rape. In fact, no, was it for murder even? I think it might have been for murder. No, I think it was for murder, actually. And he he cut off his own testicles in prison. And since coming out on release, he has been getting very involved in the trans cause again. And at a recent rally, he actually said, if you see a TERF, i.e. a trans-exclusive revolutionary, trans-exclusive radical feminist, sorry. It's been so long since I explained the acronym. I've forgotten it. I think of it, TERF is tired of explaining reality to fuckwits. It is a much better, is a much better acronym. But he said, if you see a TERF, punch her in the face. So, yeah, that was inciting violence. And that got reported to the Metropolitan Police, who decided it was fine and they weren't going to do anything about it. And then Suella Braverman got involved. So he got Sarah Jane Baker got recalled to prison. And then he had his trial a couple of weeks ago and he got found not guilty. So, oh, well, yes, you're a bit stupid, aren't you? Yes. And he said, oh, yes, I'm an idiot. That's an idiotic thing to say. Wow. And he was going around inciting a crowd of trans activists. If you see a TERF, i.e. a woman like me, because I get called despite not being a radical feminist, I get called a TERF all the time. It's just, an easy label to slap on people. I don't care. I'm sure radical feminists would and say, no, Caroline's not one. But actually, he was able to incite violence towards women like me, women like Kelly J. Keane, women like J.K. Rowling. Women MPs like Joanna Cherry, who's had a lot of pushback. Julie Bindel, another feminist who speaks out about this. Basically, if you see someone who you perceive is anti-trans or a trans-exclusive radical feminist, then punch her in the face. And he's got off with that. Which is stunning. And what Graham says is nowhere in that league at all. Graham doesn't go around inciting violence. For Thank you, my darling. Sorry, my daughter's just come in. Graham, can you shut the door, lovely? Graham doesn't come in. Graham doesn't incite violence. He's, to put him up there with someone like Abu Hamza, or, some terrible actual racist who goes around, and that, there are racists, real racists and neo-Nazis about. I know we all get called them, but we're not. But to actually equate Graham with those sorts of people, and in fact, yes, I've just checked it. So this is the same Greater Manchester Police who have been. It feeds into our next story. They have been really political and said, we stand with Stonewall and no turfs on our turf. Something is really, really rotten. And I'm glad that Graham can speak, but it shows the sort of level of censorship that everybody else is facing. Because probably if I had applied, I'm thinking, gosh, that sounds quite interesting, a Tory Party Conference event on free speech. No doubt I would be banned from attending, and because I'm not famous like Graham, then probably it wouldn't be sorted out, and they'd go, oh, we don't want her kind anyway. Not that, but do you know what I mean? It just shows not ordinary, lesser known people are being caught up in this. So I'm glad it got sorted, but it's disgraceful, particularly as Graham doesn't have a criminal record. And are they saying, okay, you can never say anything about, you can never strongly criticize, as Graham does, transgender ideology and transitioning of children, because that's also Graham's big thing, as it is with all of us, really, about the harm being affected on children. So you can't ever talk about these things because it might offend somebody else and it might lead somebody else to do something. No. If I had my way, I think we need a big revision of hate speech and hate crimes. If it were me, frankly, I would get rid of hate crime. Because actually, if you murder somebody, it doesn't make it any more heinous because you were because of your motivation. Stabbing someone to death because they have slept with your lover, or because they've been having an affair, or is every bit as vile and disgusting and horrible and deserves lifelong punishment as stabbing somebody to death because of their sexuality, their race, or their gender. All these crimes are heinous crimes, which deserve the same punishment. It doesn't make it better or worse.
Yeah.
Motivated you to do this. The fact is, once you are motivated to commit a violent crime, then you need punishment and retribution, and
a crime's a crime. It's irrelevant on what was in someone's mind. So 100% agree with you.
And so I know you're saying this moves on to the next story, which was in the Telegraph, Suella.
Well, actually, just hold it. Just want to mention one other story, just to touch on, and people can go to it's a Premier Christianity magazine.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
So people can go and read that. When it comes to ideology, gender neutral school uniforms are not neutral at all. Maybe just give us a minute and what people can find in that article, and then we'll jump on to Suella Braverman.
Okay, so this was about, and I also wrote a similar piece for the Catholic Universe this week. So this is about the fact that top public schools, as well as lots of Church of England primaries, as well as secondaries, have introduced gender neutral uniform. And not only that, but one of the UK's biggest uniform suppliers, Stevenson's, which supplies to both the independent and the state sector, they're huge, has followed suit and has deliberately, since 2019, not marketed school uniforms at either girls or boys. And so now what some of these schools have done is introduce uniform A, uniform B, and uniform C, and you choose you have to wear the whole set, so I'm wearing the whole, you can't mix and match. Yeah. Now, this sounds, as I said, if the devil's greatest trick exists in making you think that he doesn't exist, his second greatest trick lies in convincing you that he's the good guy. So on the surface of this, like all great lies, it's built on the kernel of truth, in that school uniforms ought to be practical. And so I've got no problem with girls wearing trousers if they want to, because women wear trousers in the workplace, and provided them, smart and modest. And, I think whatever school uniform, whether you wear skirts or whether you wear trousers, people find a way of modifying them. And actually, I think, in a time where we've got upskirting as well, I see these girls with, I can't believe they can get away with it, really indecently short skirts. Walking down the road, and I think, goodness, I can't believe you're allowed to get away with that just because anyway. So I think, girls should be allowed to wear skirts or trousers. Boys should be allowed to wear shorts, actually. Not all secondary schools let boys wear shorts. I think boys should be allowed to wear shorts in this weather. One of my kids' schools this week, the headmaster was stood there in a very smart pair of knee-length shorts and short sleeve shirt. Looked very smart, looked very good, because it was like 32 degrees and he didn't want to be running around in a suit. Fair game to him. And I also think, I used to watch Neighbours. They left this bit out, but I used to watch Neighbours as a teenager, and I'd be so jealous of them in their nice summer dresses. I think, why can't girls in the summer wear a nice cotton summer dress? Yeah. Why do they have to wear, cumbersome shirt, tie, and what have you? So there's a difference between being practical, but what you have to remember is that school uniforms are cut differently for girls and boys. So boys have broad shoulders, girls have smaller rib cages, girls have breasts and hips. So marketing uniform at the sexes is sensible, because it is cut differently, because men and women are built differently. What these policies are doing is erasing differences between sex. So they're saying that, we're all one amorphous mass and we should all be treated the same. Now, there's a difference between saying we should all have a quality of education, we should all have a quality of opportunity, and saying we should all be treated identically, because clearly boys and girls need a slightly different approach, not only when it comes to toilets and changing rooms, but actually PSHE, boys and girls, I'm a big firm advocate of actually should be taught separately. Some of these really, difficult subjects, and I speak to girls, they're like, I don't really want to talk about periods in a room with boys. So, and also it's interesting, when you look at the GCSE latest results, girls have massively outperformed boys academically. So, there is a difference, actually. So we shouldn't be, and by allowing children to, by making these gender neutral uniforms, you're asking children, some as young as 4 or 5, to make a statement about their gender identity and how they want to be perceived as others. So you're asking kids to make a political statement and to make a difficult adult choice. School uniforms are all about, and in fact, Keir Starmer, I think, has said that he's going to scrap compulsory school uniforms, which is crazy, because school uniforms are a great equalizer between the haves and the have-nots, and they're all about fostering a sense of, identity and community. And they're a great leveler. Yes, there's scope for making them less expensive, but actually don't abolish them. But what these gender neutral uniforms are doing is asking kids to make a political statement. It's a bit like saying you have to choose whether you're going to wear a cross or a yellow star or whatever. And in fact, schools make reasonable adjustments for pupils' faith, but they don't actually declare that you have to say how you want to be perceived by others. And if I was talking to someone yesterday whose son is now 9, but they were 8 at the time. Son came home after having all of this in school, and said that he wanted to identify as a boy, as a girl. He said he was actually a girl, and she knew nothing about it at this point. And the school suggested that she contacted mermaids, so she did. Completely naively, and she said, what they were suggesting was horrendous. that he went to all these clinics and that he got put, and they were referring her to Gender GP, where she could, get the puberty blockers and things for him. And she said it just did my head in, and she had an awful lot of other stuff going on in her life, and then did some reading and came across me, what women like me are saying. And she said, "Oh, did you know that mermaids are now being investigated by the Charity Commission?" And I said, yeah, that's really. And she said, "I'm just so glad, because now he said, oh, I want to be a boy, actually, and she had been completely liberal. When he came home and said he wanted to be a girl, she was like, well, okay, let's. She wasn't actually opposed to it, but being exposed to actually what they wanted to do made her rethink. But you think, gosh, how many other kids have potentially?
Yeah. Well, it's. I think everyone who's ever worked in mermaid should be locked away for life for sexually abusing children, which leads us on to the Suella Braverman. That, and I will take this with a pinch of salt. I don't know where you want to go on this, Caroline, but Suella Braverman, who is now the new champion of the right, just like Priti Patel was last year. Everyone has their year. Woke police are damaging public trust. Home Secretary orders investigation into officers pandering to politically correct causes, such as taking the knee to BLM protests. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think it will change anything, Caroline?
No, somebody has to put their money. Well, I don't know. She's written to the Association of Police Constables, hasn't she? I hope that, one would like to think, this is a very strong message that she's sending out, but words aren't deeds, are they? So, it's a very clear statement of intent that they shouldn't be taking the knee. They shouldn't be dancing with the Pride protesters. They shouldn't be waving rainbow flags and epaulets. And there have been so many cases. You said you were away over the summer, Peter. My goodness, there was a spate of egregious and outrageous cases come to light of terrible police behavior. And I think we've got to the point now where we need more than words. We actually need a major reform of the police. Whether I'm not, I ought to be, but I'm not politically savvy enough to sit here and tell you exactly what that should look like. But I suspect it needs action. It needs some legislation. It needs the police constables being forced to reform their forces, because over the summer we had a case of, first of all, I don't know if you saw about the autistic girl. So there was a girl with autism who was being brought home by the police because she was vulnerable and she'd gone out with her older sister. She'd got drunk. Police were bringing her home, and she said to this police officer, as she was in the confines, as she was in her house, "Oh, she looks like a lesbian, like Nana." And this, I don't even think it was a police constable. I think it was, one of these community officers, took great offence and said, "Right, she's getting arrested. She's getting arrested for a homophobic remark." Yep. And in fact, I'm mum to kids with autism, and I can tell you they have no filter at all. They just say what they're thinking. To give you a very different example, very cute example, my son said to my mother-in-law a couple of weeks ago, who's very, very sprightly for her age, very fit, very active, she wouldn't know her age. He said, "Oh, Grandma, you'd better sit outside in the sun and enjoy it while you're still alive." He said, I've been thinking, he said, "You're 80 and you've probably not got much longer to live, have you? So you ought to sit and rest your way." And he meant no harm. She thought it was hilarious. But they just say whatever they're thinking just comes out. So she wasn't being homophobic. Her grandmother is a lesbian in a relationship with another woman. She was like, "Oh, she looks like a lesbian, like my Nana." And she said, and it doesn't even matter if she was being homophobic, frankly, because the police have heard a lot worse, so they should have thicker skin. Secondly, saying so-and-so looks like a lesbian isn't homophobic. at all. And so what? So what if she looks like a lesbian? You know, who cares? Who cares? What's wrong with looking like a lesbian? What's wrong with being a lesbian? Why take great offence at that? But it was also in her own home. So actually, what you say in your own home is not a public order offence. But this woman said, no. This is terrible. And she was like, she's getting arrested. She's getting arrested. And this girl, it was so distressing to watch. She went off to her private place under the stairs, you know, which is obviously her safe space, and she was harming herself, you know, hitting and hurting herself. And this woman calls for 7 police officers for backup. And the poor vulnerable 16-year-old gets dragged into custody and interrogated for 20 hours. And because of the outcry, now this is being looked into, but it should never have happened. Then there was another case of somebody who, a septuagenarian who took a picture of a sticker, found a TERF sticker, obviously it amused her. And she took a picture of it, and she probably wanted to put it on Facebook and say, oh, look what I found. It's not illegal. A month later, she had 2 police knock at her door, and she was terrified. She thought, oh my goodness, you know, has somebody died? Because that's what you think when the police has come to your door. And they came in her house and interrogated her for half an hour about why she'd taken a picture. And apparently they'd got hold of her address because her local Pride movement recognized her because she'd made some comment on Facebook. And so basically they came to her house to lecture her about her thinking. And then of course you've got these other cases. Isabel Vaughan Spruce was asked what she was thinking when she was arrested for just standing there. She had no protest, she had no signage, she was just standing there praying in her head. And Suella Braverman has said silent prayer is not in and of itself an offence. So she's made the right noises, but I think she has to walk the walk and make sure that women are not getting arrested for taking photographs of stickers or for saying the wrong thing on Twitter or whatever it might be. I over the last few days, there was an incident which I won't talk about because it's a live investigation, but there was an incident on Twitter where a woman was arrested, and it was very difficult to know what on earth was going on here. My own experience of my local police force, which again, because of my legal situation, I can't talk about. But what I will tell you is my situation, my local police force means that now whenever I see somebody being arrested, I assume the police have got it wrong. I've made a pig's ear of it. And I just assume they're being ignorant, malevolent and spiteful. And I'm from a family whereby we were brought up to, we automatically trusted the police. They're on our side. They're our friends. They're there to help us. My daughter said to me, oh, Mummy, if the police ever come and arrest you again, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. And I said, no, darling, you mustn't. You must stay out of it. You really must stay out of it. This is, and she was like, no, but I will, because this is so terrible. They're just being so stupid and so horrible. And I said, no, honestly, please, you'll only end up being arrested yourself. And she said to me, but I'm a child. They wouldn't arrest a child. Yep. I said, actually, love, they would, and they will.
If they will arrest people for swearing, then they will do anything to anyone. And I think your views, Caroline, are probably the same as all of our viewers over the last couple of years. But let's go on to, there's one, I just want to show a little funny. This was Stonewall Lesbian Nan. This is one of the ones that went right after that story, which you basically have to smile and laugh at because it's so utterly bonkers. But let me bring up the one on, which is a story that we see quite a bit, and this is a story from CARE that I don't think we've actually had on before, who are a Christian lobby group based in the UK. And it was just their headline that caught my eye on this story. Paedophile changes gender and avoids prison. I mean, most of the stories were about the paedophile changing gender and arguing their case. That 6-word headline, that would have been not in any newspaper. It wouldn't have been online a couple of years back. And now this is, they changed. It all seems too easy, doesn't it, Caroline? You can just pick your gender to fit whatever you need in life.
And, I think, to be fair, to be balanced, it looks as if this guy, one of the reasons that he escaped, he should have had an immediate 12-month sentence. But one of the reasons that they didn't, or the judge said that he didn't jail him, was because the court system is in such total chaos that it was, being back, he'd gone on for so long that they decide that's why. Whether or not that's actually true, but I was a bit shocked. I was reading about a case. There's been a tangential case, a bit like Lucy Letby, of 2 hospital workers who are being prosecuted for manslaughter for somebody's death, a young woman's death in 2016, and it has taken the police investigation has taken 5 years. Generally speaking, I know from my own situation, it's really disgusting, actually. And this is why police time shouldn't be taken up with stupid what people are saying on social media, or someone's taking a photo of a sticker. Please. But yeah, this guy. It's this speaks to the heart of what women like me and what Graham Linehan are worried about, and we know that somebody can be a paedophile. So this person, and apparently they had 6 other offences, and this is always the case. These people always seem to have an extensive criminal past. It's almost like their paedophilia is the tip of the iceberg. They always seem to have. They've had numerous form with the law. Like this guy that you're talking about has had numerous. I think he said he had 6 other offences. He was so banged to rights that when he was arrested, he wrestled with them to stop them from taking his phone. It was 2 phones. Now, by contrast, I had my stuff taken. I didn't fight once. Right, fine. Good luck with what you're going to find. I had no worries about what they were going to find. So I have worries about. Anyway, I won't go there. but I had no worries about what they were going to find, because I know there was nothing to hide, actually. And there isn't anything to hide. I didn't try and hide phones from them or whatever. It's like, fine, but I also think when you've got a malevolent police force and an ignorant police force who've decided already that you are guilty and that you're a terrible bigot, whatever, then they will read whatever they want to into what they find. So they'll say, oh, you've been looking at a far-right website. Well, no, I've been looking at Christian Concern or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that they'll read whatever they want. When someone's out to get you, they'll find a way. But yeah, so this guy he now identifies as a woman, and he's wearing pink clothes because all women wear.
Well, let me bring up the Darren Grimes tweet, which I loved, and this is Darren Grimes, GB News presenter, who is gay, and this is the picture, I think, from the Telegraph. Surely we can all see this as a deliberate attempt to have court proceedings go through in a different name. Putting on a headband and wearing a pink T-shirt doesn't make you a woman. That's quite a profound statement.
And this is a worry, though. So people like this who've got, so he's got indecent images on his phone, and he's perpetuating child abuse, or people who've molested a teenager or a child, sexual abusers. Okay, they can then change their names and get a GRA, and then claim that this means that they can never be dead named. It means that you're committing a terrible offence, and you shouldn't be allowed to ever. It's a gift. The Gender Reform Act, or the ability, a gender recognition certificate, is an absolute gift to sexual abusers like this guy, because they can change their name. And how does that work on a DBS check? Because actually, what if this guy who had all these indecent images was at our church and, presented as Miranda or something, I've forgotten who he's presenting as, and said, oh, I want to work with your youth group. And did it, and the DBS check was done in his, new name. No one would be any the wiser.
Yep.
This, and I think it was the MP Neil Hanvey said, he's from the Alba Party, and he said, actually he thinks that, and he's gay too, and he said he thinks that once you've committed a sexual offence, you shouldn't be allowed to legally change your gender. Well, and I do think that he's right, actually, and this is what people are concerned about, and this is what we're seeing with cases like this guy you've just brought up.
Yeah, not completely. Let's we'll go 3 more stories. We'll fire through them. We'll just do 2 or 3 minutes each. Projam, do you want to bring up the online safety bill, which is story 9? Let's see if he brings it up. And this is, again, huge subject, but we'll just mention it. My interest in this was simply that the Evening Standard were asking this question: why the online safety bill remains a huge threat to London life. Legislation passing through Parliament, probably will be a law next month in October, poses big threats to the apps and websites Londoners use every day. And this is just talking about ease of use of websites. I know Wikipedia have said they may have to pull out. Signal said they may have to pull out. I know Microsoft have now expressed huge concerns. But I mean, Caroline, this is possibly the biggest restriction on the internet since the internet.
Yeah. And again, as they always do, they say they use something really terrible to hook us in and tell us why it's necessary. So they say, well, okay, we need to be able to spy on people's messages so that we can scan them for child abuse images. Nobody is going to disagree with that, right? Everyone is going to want anyone who's sharing child abuse images to be identified and jailed. But the problem is the security doesn't allow them to do that. So once you allow for this to happen, then you open up for all messages to be encrypted. And so we then have, or to be decrypted. So we then have a situation a bit like Graham Linehan earlier, Abu Hamza, who everyone would be on board with him, being silenced and, deported. That then gets translated down the line to people like Graham, normal people. So yes, this and the whole idea as well of what causes offence. This is a problem, and this is why I know we haven't got onto this, but Europe's trying to introduce these online hate speech laws because they're very ill-defined. And just they say, oh, well, saying something that could cause offence ought to be illegal, and they, I think the EU are wanting to put it right up there with a serious crime like violence against women and girls and rape and murder. It's absolutely insane. So on the back door of a very seemingly good idea, who doesn't want to stop child abusers? Who doesn't want to stop these images from being disseminated? Suddenly, all our freedoms go away. And, it is, the government needs actually to drop it. And I think that article said that by the time that actually it's so complex that by the time that it's all implemented anyway, technology will have moved on.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was Signal that pointed out if we provide a backdoor for the government to access, that opens up a backdoor for anyone to access. Governments don't seem to be clued on to realize that if it's for them, it's for anyone.
That's right. And, nobody wants strangers, corporations. I know of loads of people that would love to be reading my messages, not because I'm up to anything illegal, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are 2 more. One. This was, again, very different from the other ones. This was on Daily Skeptic, which is Toby Young's website. Energy bill authorizes reasonable force to install smart meters that allow authorities to turn customers' energy on and off. And when I read this, I thought, sure you're right, Toby. So I went and checked the legislation, and it does seem to allow police to enter. And again, this is simply just, once again, an overreach of the government. That why do they have any right to check on your electricity meter? Is that really the role of the police? But yeah, kind of, it's just
yeah, and they make the point as well that the MPs who voted this through, this is a really, really dense piece of legislation, and they're saying only 9 MPs voted against it. So basically, everybody really, really understands all the sort of thousands of pages.
Yeah.
And in it basically, these meters allow for the energy companies to just throw a kill switch and cut off your supply if you're deemed to be using too much energy. So they can just go in and say, for whatever reason, basically, your electricity or your water or whatever could be cut off. Now, I know that has always existed for non-payment of bills, but energy companies have always actually tried to work really hard with customers, particularly, they know that customers in poverty. And there is a big scandal about they've put the poorest people on these smart meters, which is a lot more expensive. So if you're on a pay-as-you-go meter, you are paying proportionately so much more for your basic services, which is a massive injustice. And I'm supposed to be a right winger, but no, it's a massive injustice. But the idea that basically the government or the energy companies can just come and cut off your electricity or gas or your water, and that basically someone can come into your property to install this sort of terrible, potentially terrible device, and they can see how much energy you're using at any time and decide to cut it off, is very worrying, actually.
And of course, they could do it at a tweet the government don't like, which is
what
we're concerned about. Yeah. Let me touch on the last story, which is something that's intrigued me, and I'm intrigued at the British fight back. And not that we would condone anything which goes against our wonderful government and police, which always have our best interests at heart. Rishi Sunak does lie awake and think about all of us, how to make our lives better. But this side, ULEZ, and it was BBC. So I know it's been under the radar and it's got bigger and bigger. When it hits the BBC, the establishment are worried about it. And this is ULEZ, which is the ultra low emission zone, which is the restriction on older vehicles driving into originally central London and now to the M25. 510 camera related crimes in 5 months, says Met Police. It looks like it's around a quarter of the cameras have been damaged, either with silly string or having their cables cut. But yeah, Carla, it was just this fight back of the public, a frustration at, once again, overreach.
This reminds me very much of the poll tax.
Yeah.
It's an ungoverned, it's the authorities trying to bring in a draconian payment that people can't afford and see as unilaterally unfair and unjust, and is on top of the road tax that we already pay. And I think if it goes on like this, then actually the ULEZ scheme is going to have to be rethought, because they can't introduce, the government govern with the consent of the people, and the people are not consenting to be governed like this. It's all part of their, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's all part of this same horrible mindset that we must monitor your energy, we must monitor where you're driving all the time. If you want to drive into a city, you must pay X amount more, which people can't afford. You must say the right thing on social media. This is kind of the danger of the internet, in that it's this state overreach. You can't travel abroad to have potential life extending treatments. This is why I heard, I'm not necessarily a massive Dominic Raab fan. He's very, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shilling for Dominic Raab at all.
Your secret has come out, Caroline.
He said that we need a new, and we have all these new political parties because we need a new political settlement. Because we saw that clip of Graham Linehan feeling very defensive. That he was speaking at a Conservative Party or going to a Conservative Party conference, because Graham has always seen himself as left liberal, social justice warrior. And actually, there is not really that much difference. The only two differences, really, I think, between the current Conservative Party and the Labour Party is fiscal governance, and how they would manage the economy and which groups they would prioritise. But really, none of it. The Labour Party don't speak for the people. They don't speak for the ordinary working man or woman, and certainly neither does the Conservative Party. And we need, and this is why we've had, the Reform Party and the Reclaim Party. We need a new political settlement. And I would love to see all these smaller parties do so much better at the general election. We need to really say to these politicians, hold them accountable. What do politicians understand? They understand electoral pain. Being voted out of office is like death for them. I am not issuing violent or death threats, just to be very clear, but I'm talking metaphorically. Being voted out is game over for them, really. So we need to, instead of being apathetic, we need to start organising and getting candidates who we can vote for, and sweep away some of these preconceptions about, okay, so you're perhaps socially conservative, you don't believe that children ought to be allowed to. Most of us, are on the same page as we don't really care what you get up to in your private life, so long as, with the usual caveats, but just don't, force everybody else to, be an unwilling voyeur, whether they want to or not. And certainly don't be transitioning children. Don't be transitioning children, don't be sexualizing children, don't be teaching children about pornography and anal sex and BDSM and stuff in the classroom. So, and this does not make you Mary Whitehouse, this does not make you hard right, this does not make you fascist, this just makes you a sensible, to use a cliche, right-thinking person. But we need a much, we need but we need a new political settlement, Peter, because none of these people speak for us.
We do, and I'm intrigued to watch. Let's see if what Suella Braverman was talking about, let's see if that comes out at the Tory Party Conference. We will wait and see whenever that happens early next month. Caroline, as always, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always good to have you on. Thank you.
Pleasure. Nice to be back.
And thank you to all. I see there are 2,000 of you watching the moment on Getter. If you've been watching on Rumble or CloutHub or Twitter or DLive or YouTube, or if you're listening on the go after on Podbean or the podcasting apps, it is absolutely wonderful to have you with us. And I hope you survive the beautiful global warming that's happening this weekend. It told you to finish on Monday. It was when there was one article that said that heat stroke, actually was warning Brits about heat stroke, and this was at a 30-degree centigrade, which for those in the US is 85-degree Fahrenheit. It's warm, but probably not what you're going to collapse off and nearly die. So well done for those of you who have made it through this summer, which is what we call it. On that, I'll let you all go. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, however you're watching, wherever you're watching. Thank you for being with us, and we'll be back with you on Monday for an interview with Richard Poe, looking at a very left field subject, looking at whether the Brits are destabilizing Africa. Completely different. Join us on Monday evening for that. So thank you so much for watching, and good night.